Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another design review as part of our version 14 season of design reviews. We are looking at our question framework and let's take a look here. All right. So, partial credit.
Right. So this is something that's been in for a couple of versions, where if the student, so the student's answer is that 3-1-2 list, and if that is a list, and you say element-wise assessment is true, then each element gets assessed on its own, and the total assessment can do partial credit, and it kind of combines the scores, sort of thing.
Linearly. So if they get 2 out
By
of 3.
default, linearly, we have all sorts of advanced options for customizing it.
Okay.
Okay. But that doesn't support common questions that we want to support for other cases where the student's answer is a list. Right. So the example right below, find the roots of the polynomial. There's 4 roots. They need to give them all. If we used element-wise assessment, you could just give a subset. And that's, more usually you want that want it to be an all or nothing, not a partial credit situation in this case. Right.
So wait a second. I'm sorry. You want them to give all of them, but they can be in any order.
Yes. So the teacher wants to, exactly. The teacher wants them to give all of them in any order, and they don't want to have to write their own comparison function for.
Yeah, okay, so we just need a thing where it just says allow any order, right?
Right. So that's what we're doing. So we've named it list interpretation. See the next one down in the light blue.
That's a crazy name. I mean,
I'm
what
happy to rename it.
Incomprehensible name.
Right. So it's if the student gives a list, how should it be assessed is what it's saying.
Yeah.
List assessment might be better. That's one of the ideas.
So what are the other right-hand sides?
So if you scroll down a little bit, I have some pseudo documentation here.
Okay.
Right. So we've element-wise assessment used to be the key, and it took a Boolean value. Now it's the right-hand side to this new option, and it'll be backward compatible, but we'll change the documentation to the new thing.
Okay. Okay. Let me see. So look, we can't be inconsistent. Ordered list, unordered. I mean, okay. What other things do we have in this assessment function options in that association?
Right. So right. So you can give like a custom function instead of using built-in stuff.
What are the names of these things?
Like comparator, selector.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. That the score combiner and answer correct combiner, those are the things I was alluding to earlier, where you can, instead of just totaling up the partial credit, you can have a custom thing.
Okay, look, I suggest we call it like list handling or something. And then we say, and then it's like something like orderless, ordered,
What's weird is orderless and ordered are also element wise. So if we're going to change your name, we might as well change it significantly to.
wait. What do you mean they're also element wise?
So the assessment function is applied to the elements of the list, as opposed to when it's none, the assessment function is applied to the full list.
Okay, well, so I think then that those should be two different options. Because you're either applying it to the whole list. So, I mean, basically it's listability, right? In some sense.
Yeah, it's analogous, I would say, I guess. If it's, yeah.
Well, okay, so I mean, so the default case, I mean, so then the other ones might be element-wise ordered, element-wise orderless. And now is there another case?
Um,
You've got three cases up there. Element-wise assessment.
right. So okay, so the other tricky part of this. So it's comparing the how we've done uh ordered list and unordered lists, how we have it implemented now. The answer key, the values of the answer key are lists, right? So it will make sure that the values in the student's answer correspond to the complete teacher list.
No, that's not
Right.
what you just told me. You just told me it was element-wise.
Yes, but they're compared element wise. So if your comparison method is calculus, then it's going to use the calculus comparison method to look at one element of the student to one element of the teacher.
I understand, but does the
Right.
student have to have the same number of elements as the
Yes. That in these new methods it does.
okay, except for the element-wise one,
The
where it
element wise
doesn't even
assessment is different. Yes, that's why it's different. In that case, typically the answer key is not a list, right? The values in the answer key are not a list because it's doing in
okay.
each one,
So I don't understand why ordered isn't the default. What's the difference between the whole thing and ordered?
Well, the whole thing, the assessment function, that like the internal assessment function gets past the entire list. So you can imagine treating it like, a vector, right? Um,
Okay, explain this again.
so it's instructed to consider the case where you had some tolerance, right? So if there was tolerance in here and you were looking at the whole, if you had none, what we're calling none so far, then the tolerance would be like the norm of the differences between the vectors,
Okay.
if that makes sense, right? The whole things are being passed to the comparator. Whereas if you had tolerance and you said what we currently call list interpretation goes to ordered list, then the tolerance would be applied to each element. So each element in the student's answer needs to be within tolerance of a distinct answer in the teacher's key.
Okay. I mean, I doubt this is all the cases. So this is now
Yeah, there could be more in the future, but this covers like the Wolfram problem generator question set.
okay. So
And
let's just understand this
yeah,
one here. So this one here is it has to be all the elements.
and they have to be in the same order as in the key, but the comparator is applied one by one.
Now, I don't understand why both of those. So whole list, you say can't be orderless. Yeah, okay. So this here, they might have a different number of elements, correct?
Separate elements. I'm not sure what you
No,
mean by that.
that's element-wise. That's what you were calling element-wise.
Okay. Yes, they might have a different length, a different, yes. Right. I like to think of that as like, name as many vice presidents as you can.
Yeah, okay. All right, let me think about this. Come on, you guys can do better than this. Come on. This is a model. How about anybody else speak up? I mean, you've been thinking about this for a while. I'm coming into this cold, so
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I thought putting them all on the same property made sense.
well, fine. But
And
then we got to
element
name the
wise,
properties
whole
correctly.
list, partial.
Well,
List
element-wise,
ordered, ordered list,
look.
separate
I mean,
I mean, what you have the line above that seems perfectly reasonable.
I don't like it.
I mean, whole list is the same as what we were calling none.
Yeah, that's right.
Um,
That makes sense to me. I mean, okay, so
yeah,
hold on. This is okay.
we could even call separate elements partial credit.
No,
Uh,
all elements. Um, well, I mean, the obvious thing would be some elements, but that's rather silly. Uh,
Any?
I think that suggests there are very few. I mean, it's like you can have as many as you want. Uh,
we could just call it element wise.
But
no,
there's a function called contains any, right? Is there an analogy there? Like all those contains this, contains that.
yes, but here it's counting.
So maybe different,
Well,
like
maybe
group
we say
group
count
counting.
elements.
Count any.
No, but what about this? Because it is counting, and the other ones are not counting. Do you see what I'm saying?
But I don't love that count elements.
Well, but that's what you're doing, right? The score is the count of agreeing elements, correct?
Right. Well, it's the
What other
total
word
of
can
the
we use for
scores of
count?
the agreeing
What's that?
elements. It's the total of the score of the agreeing elements.
I mean, those kind of say what they're doing.
I mean, that's an accurate name. It's just a little long. I don't. It's fine.
I think it's better to have it long and accurate than to be incomprehensible. All right, that's what I suggest.
Okay. There's a typo on all elements orderless.
Okay. Should we move
That's
on?
fine. Yep. So we had in 13.3 we had arithmetic result, polynomial result, and calculus result. We're adding algebra result. That's the previous subsection. I don't know if you care to look at that. It's pretty consistent.
So tell me what class this will be useful for.
Algebra.
Okay, so the calculus one is useful for a calculus class. The algebra one is useful for an algebra class.
That's the idea.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, the quintessential problem for this is, here's a polynomial cell for X.
And
Right. And it allows, so the student can, it allows evaluations in this answer that don't contain things like solve. Right. So
they could say in this case 4 over a plus b plus 4 over a plus b.
Exactly. And that'll be more correct because it doesn't differ by algebra. It only differs by arithmetic. Right.
Okay.
So that's the idea.
What about a squared minus b squared divided by a plus b versus a minus b?
That would work too. Right. So just can't have things like solve, reduce, find instance.
But I mean, is that really what people want? That a squared minus b squared. I mean, there are things which, what the heck? Okay. And now I say, I think I would say just together of that. See what I'm saying? So which functions does it do and which does it not do? Because I think that one, many people would not mark that as a correct answer, I would think. I mean, I'm far away from that world, but I would think that would not be considered the right answer if this is what they're looking for.
Right. So if it doesn't contain a symbol on our blacklist, it basically does equal, double equals and wraps it in simplify. And if it's true, it gets marked true.
Okay. But I mean, I don't know. You have to
But
ask somebody who teaches algebra whether what they like for this, because it was not, to me, this would not be the right answer, this thing up here. Yet, if I go this, double equals a minus b, and I say simplify, I'm pretty certain that will say true.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so I don't think that's I don't think that's right. I mean, I think that perhaps there are a certain set of functions. And doesn't simplify have options for which functions it can use?
I don't think so. It takes assumptions, but I don't think it takes. I don't know.
Well, I think it does take methods. I think it does take some method options.
Okay.
Yeah, transformation functions.
Oh, okay.
You got to ask somebody who teaches this stuff. I don't have the slightest idea. Okay, I just don't think this is right. Am I making sense? Who have you asked who actually teaches this stuff?
Well, we have the EdTech group, and we've talked to them. So
okay,
I don't know how many of them have middle school math teaching.
Yeah, we need somebody with specificity to tell us what they would do in this case. Use this case as an example. What would they do? What would they expect?
I mean, we have comparison methods that would prevent that. Both.
I understand. I want to know whether this one, which you're proposing as the default algebra classes, is right. Okay. I don't know. I mean, you're asking me. Okay, I simply don't know, and I know that I don't know. So you got to ask somebody who does.
Okay.
Do we have to? Can we get? No. You got to do that offline.
Yeah. We don't need to do it in this meeting.
Okay. I mean, one thing I want to say is that I do think that these comparisons have got to be fairly stable. I mean, we can't say, oh, we just changed a version, and then somebody goes back and remarks exam papers from 2 years ago, and all the scores change. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So there's a certain argument that we should make sure there's versioning information in these comparators. Am I making sense?
Yes.
Again, you got to ask somebody who's more of an expert on how this works on the ground, in the field, etc. But my feeling is that we want something where it's like algebra and it's like version, comparison, assessment version arrow 14.0 or something like this. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you
Yeah.
understand
Yes, I understand exactly what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, do you think we should just name these things like algebra result
No,
14.0?
I don't think we should. I think we should have a separate thing for versions, because some people will be kind of sloppy. I mean, look, if this is for, it's part of the documentation and part of the things we have to train people who are using these for like high stakes exams, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because there's no, if it's an intermediate, look, what do I know about this stuff? But my impression is if it's an intermediate thing in some class, and in different years it works differently, it's fine. Do you get what I'm saying? If it progressively works better because we have more sophisticated,
Right.
finer grained control, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, nobody's going to object.
Right.
The scenario that I'm concerned about is that there was an exam that was done and somebody tries to rescore the exam and they get different results.
Yeah, I understand.
And
Yeah.
I don't know how important that effect is. Okay. I don't know. Maybe people, I don't know how long they even keep the exam documentation. Maybe they probably throw it away after some period of time. I just don't know. Make sense?
Yes.
So you've got to have somebody who is actually an expert in how these things are used on the ground, right? And there's people in the, ed tech group who do know this stuff, who probably should have been in this meeting. Okay, but I'm telling you, my version of this, I think you need to look more carefully at this. I mean, can we go live with something like this? Probably yes. We didn't have this before, so people are not going to immediately pour it into lots of things. I mean, it probably should be experimental.
Oh, it's experimental, sure.
Okay.
You may also want to field test it with actual students, as opposed to not just teachers, not just like have people. Algebra is high school level, right? So you want to have maybe some high school level students try this out and give you feedback about what worked and what doesn't
through
work.
people who are actually dealing with the on the ground deployment, okay, which includes things like that. But we're designing this in a very theoretical way here.
Okay, so the next thing here is a feature that we do know is important from people in the ed tech group, and that's advanced tolerance support.
Okay. What does this mean?
So we have two different new math comparisons that support advanced tolerance. That one of them, this one that we've so far called numerical approximation, just adds tolerance to each numeric value in the teacher's in the answer key. And the next one that we called engineering result only adds it to inexact values in the answer key.
Okay. Oh, come on. Okay. Okay, I understand. What's it going to do by default? Presumably it's going to use precision control, but how does it know what the precision that's being asked for? What the hell
The
is
tolerance?
that?
Oh, that's going away. That's an implementation transient thing. It's not going to be released.
Okay, but there's a tolerance number that's going to be given.
There's a tolerance number that's going to be given.
And that number might or might not be applied to exact numbers. Right? That number, that
in
tolerance
engineering
number,
result, it will not be applied to exact
I
numbers.
understand. I understand. So that's what I'm saying, is that the choice is, now normally when we do a tolerance for equal, simply if it's an integer, if it's an exact integer, then there's no tolerance ever, right? What's a case
Well, if we
where
do,
want this?
one point double equals 1 gives true, right? There's a precision.
I know, but I don't understand why in this case here they don't give the comparator as, or the thing that they're comparing to as in exact numbers, and make it so that whenever there's an exact number,
well, that's
it
going
just-
through fit, which automatically numericizes things. That's why that one. All right. It's there.
okay, but I don't understand. I'm just saying there's an answer, right?
Right.
That is supposed to be the right answer. If that right answer is numerical, then do a numerical comparison. If that right answer is exact, then do an exact comparison. And that seems to me much more intuitive than some weird option that decides whether to do this. And then just say the rule is, if it's exact, it's an exact comparison. If it's inexact, it's not.
Yeah, actually, it's what it's doing in the first method. So yeah.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm saying, why isn't that just the way it works?
I don't understand what you're proposing. So
I'm proposing getting rid of these options, and I'm proposing simply telling people, if you want it to do an inexact comparison, don't say the answer is 1. Say the answer is 1 point. If
but
you
how do
say
you
the
tell?
answer
How do you
is
say
1,
what the tolerance should be?
I'll have a tolerance option. But the tolerance option only applies to inexact numbers.
All right. Well, we can't use a tolerance option with some of the other methods. We don't have a way to implement it with every
I'm
method.
sorry, which other methods?
We can't do it with anything that is going through equal. We can only do it with things that are going through match, so calculus result and algebra result would not support it.
Well, I don't think anybody wants inexact algebra and calculus results. I don't think anybody wants them.
Right, but we need
I think it should just be
we need named comparison methods that support
right,
tolerance.
but look, in the algebra and calculus case, if somebody gives inexact numbers, we should just do what equal does, because it's a corner case.
But what if they give a tolerance?
Who
If they
gives
give
a
it-
tolerance?
What is it? The teacher. If the teacher says, if the teacher
Well, I
says,
think it's not something they're going to do, so I'm not worried about it. I mean, in other words, if they say, if you type x minus 1 point, and if you type x minus 1 point, I just don't believe it. I don't think it's a case we need to worry about. 1 point this will mark it as right. Forget it. No, they don't need it.
we definitely want to have this where you can specify exactly what the tolerance is on values.
But no, you don't. Not for algebra. No,
Right,
you
but
don't.
there are problems where we want it.
Absolutely,
Engineering
which are
problems.
numerical problems, not
Yes.
algebra problems, right?
So we
what I'm
need a
saying
name.
is-
We need a name for the comparison method that accepts tolerance for something like an engineering problem.
Okay, but I don't understand why we're not just saying tolerance, arrow, whatever, a number.
That is what we're saying. Yeah, that is the transient thing. That real won't actually be in there.
Okay, so the tolerance then will probably be something like, I don't know whether it's, it's significant digits. I mean, there's any one of these things. It matters whether we're talking about significant digits or absolute or whatever.
Yes, right
That
now
makes
it's all
sense?
absolute. But we
Well, which is
we also
probably not right.
we also have are going to support scaled for relative,
Oh,
but we're not doing significant digits.
we used to always talk about when we're doing designs, it's like a boat and it's taking on water. And you start running the pumps because more and more things are like, oh my gosh, we got this issue, we got that issue. Run the pumps faster. That's not the right way to do this. I mean, possibly the right thing to do is, what if you've got 3 numbers and one of them is supposed to be this tolerance and one is supposed to be that tolerance?
We have that right, the discussion point at the very bottom of the notebook right now.
Yeah, okay, well, how is that supposed to work?
So you would mark up individual values with a wrapper. Right now it's shown as
Come
plus minus, but it
on,
won't
come
really be
on,
plus minus.
come on.
And
No.
all of this will be written through the authoring notebook where
Which nobody's going to understand. By the time this is being written, nobody's going to understand it. All right, so look, let's talk about what's actually needed here. Okay, it does matter whether they get 18.23. How many digits are they supposed to get? right? Let's say that the answer is supposed to be 18.23 meters per second. What happens if it's in different units? Do we deal with that? What happens if they say centimeters per hour?
Right. So if the answer is a quantity, we have good support for units in the quantity comparison method. We have a comparison method called quantity that
Okay.
works on units, and it already takes a tolerance and it's unambiguous. But when the answer is a formula,
What does the tolerance mean? Is the tolerance given units?
the tolerance is given in units.
Okay.
It's absolute.
Okay. So it's an absolute tolerance.
And the conversion works on, yes.
Okay. Let me
Yes.
point out that in a randomly generated problem, absolute tolerance may not work.
I understand. Yes.
Okay.
That's the most common thing, and just a naked number on the right-hand side of the tolerance option should mean absolute.
Yeah. Although I think, significant digits, i.e. precision, is an even more common thing. Get it right to X number of significant figures. Again,
I
do
don't
we have
think
anybody
I've
here who actually
ever taken a quiz where they,
Well, what do they say?
I mean, they say, within X, get the value, within this many, and they mean an absolute thing.
Really? Well, I mean, I'm out of this game because I've never taken a multiple choice. Yeah,
Well, that wouldn't be
they
multiple
weren't
choice.
a thing when I was a kid. It wasn't yet a thing. So multiple choice wasn't yet a thing.
I mean, I guess they do say expressed to so many significant digits. That is certainly.
Do we have anybody from the Wolfram Alpha team here? I think we just have the wrong people for this meeting. Because we need people who've actually, who are actually doing this stuff on the ground. Because I don't know what the right thing to do is here.
We can ask them outside of this meeting as a follow-up.
We can continue this with a larger group.
Yeah, I think that's what we have to do. I just don't know. And what
Yeah.
I would do in the first instance is, if it's exact, make it exact. If it's inexact, use a tolerance. But I don't know how you do that when there are a list of numbers and some of them are a 0.01 and some of them are 1,000. How do you use a tolerance then? If you've got a list of numbers with very different magnitudes.
Right.
So what do you do?
Well, one thing we've supported it within these like engineering result, what we're calling engineering result numerical approximations. You can do tolerance goes to scale of,
Oh, that's
0.01.
horrifying.
That
That's absolutely horrifying. What's wrong with working precision? That's what we use everywhere else. Or something like that.
That's a little bit different. That's a little bit different, right? That's the precision the computation should be having, and not how things should be compared afterwards, right?
So it's comparison precision, but that's something we don't have.
Right.
Do we have that in equal or something like equal?
No, there's no, as far as I know, equal is hard set to like a machine precision.
I mean, if this is done on a test, the students would be calculators, right? I mean, this is like, this would be deployed as a web page or something. Is that right? That like as a homework problem?
Yes.
And as far as I know, all high school students in the entire world still, use calculators for this sort of stuff. So that means that, like the 0.5 meter per second tolerance is, that's probably way too big, right? Like a calculator could get this right with, 4, 5, 6 digits of precision. And that's probably, expected. Like it should at least have.
Calculator usage has been declining, largely as a result of Wolfram Alpha and related things. So just for what it's worth.
Yeah, so but I mean, my students still use calculators, either on the phone or an actual calculator when they're doing algebra and this sort of physics problems. So
yeah, okay.
So if the problem is given with 18.23, then I suspect that the answer also has to have at least those 2 digits of precision. It may be one less or one extra, I don't know, but I don't think it would explicitly state that 0.5 meter per second thing in any problem.
Right, so what you're saying is the digits, if the teacher gives the answer as 18.23, they're expecting that the actual result given will lie. So is 18.22 an acceptable result or not?
Well, no, because that's not the answer, right? The answer will be something like, 25. I don't know what the question. I try to understand the question. I don't even understand the question. But
let's not worry about this particular question.
Suppose the answer is 512.18 or something, right? Like that's. I imagine that the answer will want to be with some,
Okay, what I think we
I'm-
should do.
I mean, the types of questions we're considering here is where the answer is 512.83 times
It's-
X plus
okay.
A over 5, right?
Yeah, all right. That's a weird corner case.
But I mean, the case where it's just a number isn't complicated, right? We've had that
Yes,
for
it is
years.
complicated. Yes, it is complicated to do it right. I
The
think
tolerance,
Michael will be
the
a good
tolerance
person
option is unambiguous what the tolerance
Yeah, but
option.
it's a bad
Same
way
thing,
to
the
do it.
tolerance
It's a
option.
really
It's what
bad way
teachers,
to do it.
I'm pretty sure it's
But
what
it-
teachers want.
It's a bad way to do it. It's fine if you have a single number. If you have a vector, for example, and the vector is this, right? It's a bad way to do it. Sorry.
Right. So on vectors, we do the norm of the difference.
Oh, for goodness sake. And no teacher is going to know to compute, to specify the tolerance for the norm of the difference.
You're not
If they're
using
saying the
around or
comparison method
something.
is vector, then what? Right? If it doesn't
No, I know,
default
but
to
if they
treating it
think
like a
it's
vector.
element-wise,
Well,
what
then
is the comparator? Because they say, I want the kids to get it right to within, you see what I'm saying?
right,
So
right. Then what we've had for a couple versions is just absolute. So
Don't we have
about
around for that
absolute?
or whatever? Like, don't we
yes,
have
Around-
we do,
or-
but okay.
no
The
teacher
person
wants
who
to
will
use
really know
around.
this
It's
is Michael,
a-
because this is the whole, Michael and Jose are the ones who are really going to know this. This is subtle. This is not something where we're just going to hack it through.
around is not part of the solution, I don't think at all.
Well, I'm not certain about that. I'm not certain. I think we could imagine a solution for very persnickety teachers where they give an around specification or an interval specification.
And they want the
That's not
student to be
common
within a
case.
certain number of standard deviations if possible, or
No, they want them to be within the plus minus and the around.
it's not a plus minus, it's a normal distribution.
I'm aware. I know.
Right.
I know. So it's a way, it's an alternative to giving an interval, which is it's a more convenient way to specify something like an interval.
But it is a normal distribution, right? It's
I'm
not
well aware. I
right.
know.
So
the question is,
Okay,
does-
maybe around was the wrong thing, but like there's
No,
other things, right? Like
I
interval
don't think
or
that, okay, there's interval and centered interval and so on.
right.
that
Those are
certainly
all very
makes sense.
persnickety, okay? But again, Jose has worked on precisely this for around, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let's get him involved in this, okay? Let's just not, break this for, a whole generation of
But the
students
computer
by
science
doing this in
solution,
a sloppy way.
the
we don't
computer
need to do it in a
science
sloppy
centered
way.
design might not be the education centered
I don't
design.
care. I don't care. So let's get in this meeting people who actually understand the math of this and the people who understand how it's used in education. And we have neither of those groups here. So we really can't do this in this meeting. Sorry. I mean, this is going to be subtle. And we're going to end up with probably several options, and it's going to be quite subtle.
Yeah.
And we're going to end up with some reasonable default that people will use and that will do the right thing most of the time.
And the teacher wouldn't necessarily need to know the
Teacher won't know
functions of the
squat.
default,
The
right?
teacher will
Right,
most
so-
of the
so-
time just use
so
the
they
default,
just
but we
fill
should get
out-
the default
right.
right. And my guess is that a very important piece of information in the default is what the teacher typed as the answer.
Of course.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
But the teacher might have typed this as the answer. And what does that mean? How much precision does that have? See what I'm saying? Because that has that amount of precision.
Right.
Okay? So this is quite subtle, right? In other words, when they say n of 1/7, do they mean 6 digits? Do they mean 16 digits? What do they mean? See what I'm saying? So
Yes.
let's, I'm afraid we need another meeting with the right set of people here for this. Sorry. I mean, again, I would recommend that you meet with these people separately. I'm telling you,
we meet with EdTech people all the time.
okay,
but
I think you
not
need Michael
The
and Jose as
okay.
well. I think you need those people. I think this is subtle. I think, again, Michael knows all these things that come from all the standards that NIST and so on have put out about what significant figures actually mean. Let's use all that information and all of that tradition, so to speak, here. Okay, and not kind of hack it with some random thing. It is subtle. And there will be corner cases. Now, again, people will use the default 99% of the time. So let's get the
Right.
default as right as we can. And the number one piece of information is, what did the teacher say the answer was? Am I making sense?
Yes.
And in a more
Right.
complicated
I mean,
case,
I think equal, this is all built into equal, and that is what the default is.
okay. Well, let's ask these guys because I'm not certain that
Okay.
that's the way everything works. If that's the default, then we don't have to have this discussion. The only discussion that we have is, does 1 point mean the same as 1?
No, that's not the only discussion.
Well, no. In that case where we're just saying we use the
The
default
implied precision is not the only thing teachers are going to want.
Okay. Well, what precision are they going to want, and how do you
They're going to
know?
want to specify tolerance.
No, they're not. No, they're not. Not in the only if it's a single number. If it's a single number, they want to specify. How do you think they think about it? How do you think they're going to think about it? If the answer is 18.23, how are they going to think about what the student could enter? They're going to think about it in terms of the characters the student types, I think.
Yep, they are. And
Or
they're
are
going
they
to,
going to think about it in terms of the math? In other words, if the student enters
and they're going to think, I want the student to
18.2999,
put in 2 digits, which they're going to think means 100th. So they're going to want to put 100th somewhere. They're not going to want to put in 2
well, no, the question is,
because they're not
for
going to think
example,
about it single
some
digits.
teachers would say, this is not the right answer. That's too much precision. I would say that.
You would say that. Yes, but I don't think that's what.
Well, let's find out. We don't know. I think a lot of people, if they don't currently mark this as wrong, they should.
Yeah, okay, I don't know either, but I think students know how to round, a digit, like the last, like.
Well, actually,
Right.
I've seen lots of examples where they quote calculator, where they copy every single digit from the display of a calculator,
Yeah, but like
which is wrong.
if the
for
prom
many-
asks
in many
for,
cases.
like give 2 digits after the decimal point or
I
something,
understand
they
that.
should
I
know that
understand
it's
that, but what should they do by
330, not
default?
29.
And the answer should not be give something like this by default. If the input contains numbers to 2-digit precision, they should not give this by default, even if their calculator or Wolfram language said that. Am I making sense?
Yes.
I consider it the wrong answer. And that to me is something where, we will need an option that determines whether you think that's the wrong answer or not. Okay, I'm telling you, this is subtle. Let's try to get it right. Okay. I noticed on our live stream, James is asking, is there a negative marking function? In other words, if you say this, you get minus the number of points.
That's been in for in the first option to assessment function. You can give an arbitrary number of values that are compared against, and each one can be correct or incorrect and give an arbitrary score. So you could say one is -1 point or -10 points and so on.
Let me just make a comment about a generalized comment here. I mean, the vast majority of people who are building edtech software don't have a clue about all of these issues, all these subtle issues about numerical analysis and so on. We do have a clue. Let's not get it wrong.
That's a good point. It is our
we actually
strength.
have a bunch of world experts in this, so let's not use them to do the best we can to get this right.
That's a good point.
Okay, so we need to come back to this, but you should do a separate meeting first, and then we'll come back to this.
Okay.
And I'm telling you it's subtle, and I think we're going to want to have things like centered interval numbers. We've got, some people who are doing some very fancy, high stakes exam might well want to actually write in centered interval type things. But people who are just sort of, I think the answer is 18.2 or something, just give that, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay.
All right. So this next part we can do if you want. It's not really design
Can I run
review.
this?
Well, if you had run anything else previously in the notebook, it would have loaded the Packlet and you could run it. So,
well, will this load the Packlet?
No. Just run anywhere it says question, or just do question object, shift enter, and it'll load the Packlet, and then you can run it. All right. So this is very much not design review stage. That should have loaded. You did the Packlet install at the top, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean, I do this one then.
Oh, this looks
great. 18
Yeah, I'm
over 1.
Yes, yeah, maybe there's a problem with it. I'm happy to demo it if you want.
All right, briefly demo it.
Yes,
Grab the share.
Sure.
You grab it directly from me.
No, it won't let me until you give it up.
Do it.
So, so this is, rebuilt question authoring notebook. It's
Why
still,
the heck is the highlight color light blue?
this is not, design has not gone ahead or past this at all.
Okay.
So the main thing that I want to show here is the complete change in UX. So instead of having like an area here with a bunch of input fields that had a whole bunch of complications to it, if you want a GUI editing thing for a specific question, you hit this and it opens a secondary dedicated notebook just for one question.
Okay.
And you fill it out, and then when you're done, you can test it within this notebook. You can tweak it. You can add random variables
That's a
and make
good
it a
idea.
question
Yeah,
generator.
this is a good idea.
And then when you're done, you hit finished, and this is a little slow now, but it collapses back into here. And
Is
if you
that
want,
notebook saved, or is it?
it's just stored
temporary
in this
notebook?
notebook. So you would want to save this untitled 60 to save it.
Okay.
But you
And
can
then
re-edit
we'll
it by clicking on it
reconstitute
again.
that.
You can,
that
if you hit this
sub
button
notebook.
again, it'll open it again, and you can go back and forth
Okay.
ad infinitum. And then we have this toggler here, which I made up this icon. It's not right. To switch to code mode. So if you want to just write the code,
Yeah.
it's
This is
infinitely
nice. This is an
customizable.
improvement. It got
Right.
overbuilt.
And then you hit the toggle again, and it opens the notebook again, and you can keep going.
Okay.
Right. So, and you can, there's tools for markings. This A is going to be filled in by as a slot. It's not literally A sort of thing.
How did you make that slot?
It's an inline cell. Is that what you mean?
No, how did you type it right now? I wasn't paying attention.
Oh, I hit this button. I highlighted it and I hit this button in the toolbar.
Sorry, what does that button say?
It says select for formatting, which
The hell
isn't
does that
great.
mean?
I don't know.
No, that's complete nonsense.
In Danny's version of this that inspired it, it was called something with math in the name. I didn't love that either. It means that it'll be formatted.
What do you mean it'll be formatted?
It'll in the question object. It'll.
It's not formatting. It's computing a random variable to put in there.
Well, it both. It does both.
Of course it formats it. It shows the value.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's basically just like in a template notebook. If you start a new template notebook, there's a thing exactly like that. Okay. I think it's just an expression, template expression, right? It's the thing.
Right.
That evaluates that. We could use the same visual, another metaphor there.
Okay.
Right, because that's going to be evaluated on notebook load in the case of template notebooks. And this is the
That's a
same
good
thing.
point.
Will be instantiated in the same way.
Right. It's I'm not defending these terms. Yeah, we could certainly call it something like template expression.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And we can explain
Template expression might make sense. Yeah. And then when so we have these that map to comparison methods, where
I don't know, by the way, whether template slot would be useful for these things. I don't know. I mean, I could imagine something where if the person's name is Bill, give them this, and if it's Bob, give them that.
Right. I mean, you're going to need to write code in that case for sure.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a silly case, but I mean, I could imagine. Yeah, it's a silly case.
Right, and you can use the same. You can use the same tools in the answers. That makes more sense when there's multiple choice. Sorry, this isn't multiple choice. So, like if it's a multiple choice answer, definitely. I don't know why this didn't turn gold. It should have turned gold. There's still bugs. But
okay.
Yeah, so then some of these have more options. You can get more fine grained.
Well, each one should have some kind of a mouse over. I mean, that's what.
Yeah. We need more info buttons. We need tooltips. We need lots of stuff. I know I was really wanting
I like
this
the
to be in
idea.
14.0, but it's just not going to make it in time for the freeze because there's a lot to do. And I just wanted to sort of show the general UX of this secondary notebook and
I
this
like it.
toggle.
Yeah, I
Great.
like it. I think this is good.
Great.
I think it's a great improvement. I think it uses the learnings that we have from things like the function repository
Right.
that, you know, it's got to look easy when you start typing something, or nobody will ever start.
And it's all implemented on that same definition notebook client that we're using for the resource
Oh, that's
types.
nice.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Okay, great. If you
All
think
right.
this is the right direction, then
I
we
think
can
it is.
certainly
I
plow
absolutely think
ahead
it is.
without really any other comment.
Okay. The other thing that those numerical precision things, those we've got to yeah. Okay, we should wrap up here. All right. But you will iterate on that. Okay, thanks.
Yes, we will.
Okay,
Yeah,
bye.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.